So, Abraxas, my good man, how did you first find out about magic?
I've been trying to remember how that happened since you and I first talked. It's kind of a bit of a winding road. Honestly, I think one day I just kind of stumbled on Wikipedia of Solomon's grimoires and all that, and just kind of
Right.
went down a Wikipedia rabbit hole of learning all that. Then took me a long time to actually get into actual practicing and doing all that. But yeah, I think what really drew me into it was I discovered the band Behemoth, and
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
so I started researching of all the symbols they would use in their lyrics, and I was like, oh, this is a whole new world. I had no idea about any of this.
So there was no kind of childhood playing with in the forest or with the trees or talking to ghosts or anything like that. It was more you were a fully grown adult when you discovered magic, I suppose, is that? Or teenager?
I was more of a teenager.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I was definitely more of the ghosts and aliens and Bigfoots. I discovered X-Files at a pretty young age, and that kind of changed my world right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of a natural progression from weird, sort of ghost tales and scaring myself with alien abduction books from the library and all that. And I
Nice.
eventually just kind of evolved into this.
So, so you first came across and you did like Wikipedia. So, what sort of people were you coming across? Was it all kind of just theory? Were you just doing through Wikipedia, or did you get into some sort of did you get into authors fairly quickly, or what way did that work?
Originally, it was just basically I would come across, like Azrael or, Beelzebub or something like that. I was like, well, what does that mean? And kind of
Right. Yeah.
research that. I didn't really get into authors until Grant Morrison. I heard his Fat Man on Batman
Oh, right. Okay.
interview, and that was mind blowing right there.
Yeah.
So then that introduced me more to the chaos side of things, and from there I would learned a little bit. In my early 20s, I was much more focused on booze and blow and parties and all that. So took me a while to actually start living the life. I think the first book I picked up was actually the first book I picked up was 777 by Aleister Crowley, because it had a bunch of symbols in there, and I
Right.
wanted
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
have some metal band ideas, but an actually useful book for a
Yeah.
beginner. I heard the last podcast on the left, Chaos Magic episodes, and so then that gave me the name Phil Hine, which is that was
Okay.
that was the instigator for me to actually start practicing, because I could finally understand what I was reading rather than having to deal with Crowley's, old English style writing that you need a thesaurus right next to it to figure out what you're reading.
Sure. Yeah. And deliberately saying things to put you off, to lead you astray, and all of that kind of
Yeah,
stuff, and all that double
yeah,
talk and blinds and all of that nonsense. But I suppose that we hope no longer is in occult circles, but probably still is to a large extent. I think an awful lot of that comes from people not really knowing what they're talking about. Not
yeah. It's
not
a lot of
necessarily in Crowley's case, but in an awful lot of people's cases. That they put these
yeah.
blinds, bunny rabbit ears blinds, but it's just no, they just get things wrong because they don't
Yeah.
know.
It's
So
people these days trying to sound smarter than they actually are.
that's it, yeah. So Phil Hine, did you that was a condensed chaos? What did you?
I first heard that last podcast on the left episode when I was on my way moving to Denver, Colorado. And as soon
Okay.
as I moved there, I was just, exploring the town. I realized I had a, spiritualist store right down the street from me. So I was like, oh, I can
Oh, cool.
finally, have access to this. So I started going in there, buying books. Quickly went from Phil Hine to modern magic, which wasn't really my thing.
No.
It's a bit too ceremonial, is just way too rigorous and strict for my taste.
Well, he did
But
rewrite the last chapter or add an extra chapter, 13th step of chaos magic. So like if you get the newer versions of modern magic, there is a kind of a chaos section, but it's a chaos section definitely as approached by a ceremonial magician.
yeah, yeah,
So is that the one you got? Was the case in that one, or was it all just the original 12 steps to power or whatever it is?
No, I got the newest one, but I don't think I ever made it past the Kabbalah part because
Right. Okay.
just I tried Kabbalah for a long time, just does not resonate with me.
No.
That's why I can never get into Crowley's Thelema and Golden Dawn stuff. I can't stand Kabbalah. I don't know
Yeah,
what
it's
it
one of those
is.
things that I find that it's seems to people who like math or into mathematics really seem to like that, and people who like that kind of information type thing. But I've never found it practically useful at all, or any sort of practical use for it, other than trying to shoehorn every other system on the planet into some sort of Sephiroth system or whatever, which just drives me insane. I'm sure there is a practical use to it because Crowley seemed to see it as a practical tool. But yeah, I was the same. I spent too long on it thinking I should be into it. That kind of way. That's because, oh, well, everyone's into this, so this is a thing you should pay attention to. And then I just went, nah, don't care.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what happened with me. Is I was beating
Right.
myself up because I couldn't, get anything from the LBRP. I almost went to when I was in Denver. I almost went to the OTO was holding a class on the Kabbalah, and I almost went, but then I saw what the OTO looked like there, and I was like, I don't want to be associated with those people.
Yeah, no one seems to have a good OTO story. It's very odd. I'm sure, again, I'm
Yeah,
sure there is some decent ones, but no one I've spoken to.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
the Kabbalah thing I kind of studied what was with the Paul Foster case and BOTA, which is that that correspondence course that you do through the mail. You get like 4 lessons, but it was mostly the tarot thing that got me into it. But it was the Kabbalah thing that got me out of it because it's just like
yeah.
everything was kind of related to everything. And I goes, no, it isn't. I don't think it is. I'm not convinced that every single thing is contained within 10 circles. So you had decided Kabbalah, can't speak now. The Kabbalah is not for you. What did you get on to next? What was it? What was
For a while, I was just kind of picking up random books and reading them. As far as actual practice goes, it kind of stalled out for a little while. I found Peter Carroll's Epoch Esotericon,
right?
and
Yes,
I
yeah,
really like the updated Kabbalah for the modern man, and
yeah,
I
yeah.
think the Kaobala is much more my style. But I didn't really work through that one because it seemed a bit I wasn't ready for it yet. And around
Right.
that time, I discovered 40 Servants, and so I
Okay.
decided to do a kind of a try my hand at working with entities, whatever you want to call them, uh, through the 40 Servants. And then after I went through there and I really enjoyed doing that, then I went back to Epoch and Esotericon and started working through that. And that's what
Right.
really kind of kickstarted my regular practice of daily things and getting really properly weird with it.
Right. Did you do Liber Null? Did you do Psychonaut? Did you do Liber Chaos? Or what, did you just go straight to Epoch?
Epoch was the first one I read. I can't quite remember where I first came across it. I think I saw an image of one of the cards online somewhere, and I was like, "Oh, that looks shiny and new. Let me get that one." So, yeah, I did quickly read Liber Null and Psychonaut after that because I really liked his writing style. I can't remember why someone said not to read Liber Null and Psychonaut until you're more advanced because it's not written very well for beginners, but I didn't find that at all. I thought Peter
No.
Carroll did a pretty good job of making it easy to understand and practical.
Yeah, it's the thing with kind of Liber Null, I suppose, is that there's so many people no chaos magic really doesn't exist without, as we know it now, without Liber Null. But I think it's kind of it's somewhat dated outlook on chaos magic in that it's progressed a wee bit more, and I think it's not helped by the fact that Peter Carroll doesn't rate it as a book too much these days either. But it's his first book and he was quite young and all that. But there's definitely some stuff in it. There's a lot of dogma in it too, which is strange considering the whole kind of exercise was to, eradicate the dogma from occult and stuff like that. But I think it's definitely a decent beginner's book because that whole Liber MMM and getting your meditation down and your daily practice and all this kind of stuff it's very important, and it's a thing that people. It's not very sexy, It's not controlling the weather, or it's not speaking to Boone or something like that. But it's very important to kind of settle people into a magical way of thinking, I suppose. Did you
Yeah.
start doing did you go through Liber MMM, or did you start a meditation practice at that point, or had you been meditating, or?
I had started meditating when I was trying to work through modern magic. I'll do the meditation. I started trying to do the whole LBRP and the tarot contemplation ritual and all that. And I just
Yeah.
got so bored, so I kind of fell out of that stuff for a while. So meditation was something I struggled to really start a proper daily practice with for a while.
Yeah.
Luckily, I've gotten better in the past year or so. Yeah, I never really worked through all the steps of Libernol. That was more of a reading it to kind of change my thinking about things. And between discovering Peter Carroll and your stuff, that's what really helped me think of like, oh, I can kind of do this however I want to. I don't need to sit
Yeah.
there and, find, I've got to dig through the archives and find this scroll and, do that step by step. So
Yeah.
it was it took a while for me to actually get into the proper chaos magic mindset of do whatever you want and see if it works.
Well, that's it. Yeah, did you come across, or did you read Advanced Magic for Beginners, or any of the Alan Chapman stuff at any stage, or did that come up on your radar?
I did read Advanced Magic for Beginners. That wasn't until later on, though. I can't quite remember exactly when it was, but I'm pretty sure I was already developed a practice by the time I read that one.
Read it, yeah, yeah, yeah. And what about RuneSip? That seems to feature largely in a lot of people's kind of stories? Did you come across Gordon at all on your travels?
I'd heard about him. I think I tried listening to one or two episodes of his podcast. I think I chose the wrong episode to listen to for the first time, and so I put it off for a while. I have been listening to it more recently. I started working a job where I can listen to podcasts while I'm working, so I kind of ran out of my usual podcast and started expanding more from there. So he's definitely one of my regulars now. But as far as I haven't read any of his books yet, I keep hearing great things. I just haven't picked them up.
So you're firmly rooted in the chaos kind of continuum at this point, or whatever. So what did that look like practically? What were you doing? Like what were you doing? Sigils? Were you, creating servitors? What magic were you doing?
Sigils, I've done a few. I've had mixed success with them. It hasn't been a big part of the practice other than creating sigils for like servitors. Servitors were a big one for a while. Now I do a lot of what I just call entity work, which is what I got into through, your 40 servants and then Esotericon. Because, the Kaobala is all kind of divided into planets and planetary gods and all that.
Yeah.
So that's more of what I do now. I've also more recently started trying to get into energy work some. That one I'm struggling just because there's so much new age fluff out there that trying to learn about it is kind of difficult. So it's more of basically lighting candles, carving stuff onto the candles, meditating, just reaching out mentally. One of the first big experiences I had, I was just doing a normal meditation, and all of a sudden I saw, like, in my mind's eye, I saw a smaller version of myself tethered to my head, like floating out in the ether. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I tried to like draw it around in front of me, and as I did that, it morphed into Baphomet. I was like, whoa, I'm like face to face with Baphomet. This is cool. I never had a, visual experience like that before. So I was like, oh, well, teach me how to do this. Like, teach me some magic. And it was interesting. After that whole little ritual happened, I would pick up books and be reading through the books. One of the biggest ones this happened with was Andrea Vitimus's Hands-on Chaos Magic. Yeah. As I'm reading the book, I'm like, oh, I'm already doing that. I'm already doing that. I'm already doing that. And it was just kind of like, if I want to do something, I would sit down and be like, all right, how can I achieve this? And just kind of come up with a little ritual or practice. And come to find out that's a established, practice in other systems. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
That's pretty cool. And was it just out of kind of a logical progression of what you were doing, or were you kind of getting? Do you feel were you tapping into the current and finding your own way through it, or why do you think that happened? I suppose.
I mean, to get properly woo with it, I would say it was because, Baphomet was teaching me how to do things. It very well could be that it was a natural progression, but there's no fun in believing that. So I want to, go the weird route.
Yeah, sure. And so, right, so Baphomet. So what does Baphomet mean to you then? What?
My own UPG is that I know it's just a big debate on if it is an actual, deity or entity, whatever, or if it's just a symbol. And my own UPG here, I hold no claims that this is, truth,
Sure.
objective
What is
truth.
truth, though? What is truth?
Yeah, exactly. I would say it was created as a symbol, Eliphas Levi, however you pronounce his name.
I know I've heard it many different ways.
Yeah, same here. Yeah. I would say he, created the symbol, and something out there said, hey, I like that. I'm going to, take that as my skin now. And so for me, it is kind of the personification, I guess, of just life force, complete balance and, animal, human, just life on this planet. So I kind of view it as the Earth planetary force, much like, Jupiter or Venus and all those.
And like a kind of a Gaia, a form of Gaia, that kind of thing, like as in not exactly Mother Earth, but like the totality of life on Earth. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Or
yes.
Rather than human, which is it's mostly kind of, isn't it seen? Baphomet is seen as the kind of totality of human experience or human energy or something like that. So you'd go a step further.
Yeah, I tend to view it as a, totality of life. I've also gotten some sense that it is sort of the gateway to, magic and stuff.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure how to explain that. I tend to view entities as being, so if you picture them like a waveform, they can have say, for example, Hecate and Amaterasu could be part of the same waveform, just different ends of the spectrum.
Sure.
And so it has the same basis, but they're separate, but also kind of the same thing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, so I suppose it's like the thing of light, where it's a particle and a wave, depending on what way you want to look at it or want to test it.
Yeah, precisely.
So is your Baphomet to you, has he, it, or whatever we want to call it, like, has it a personality? Is it like, has it an individual sovereignty? Or is it more like an archetype, an encapsulation of an idea? Or how does he approach, or how does it approach you? How does it present itself?
After that first big experience, I've struggled to get decent contact with it, him, her, whatever you want to refer to it as. So as far as like, mental conversations with it or whatever, it's more of very one-sided as far as, I reach out and I don't get too much back. I do feel a presence at times. But I kind of think it's both an archetype and a personality.
Okay.
Yeah, again, it comes back to that. This stuff is just so, out of our wheelhouse. It's so hard for us to understand because we don't have a, proper basis of what these things look like.
Yeah. So the idea that, like, as Grant Morrison said in that last kind of interview that he did, one of the podcast things, where he says that, that Mars is a planet, but it's also an energy, it's also a dude, it's also a guy, it's all of these things. And why not all these things? And trying to say it's one thing is kind of missing the whole point of it or whatever. Particularly when you're dealing with things that are definitely a lot older than us. Like say like the archetype of father or the archetype of mother, which is, like it's so old and ancient that, like, who are we to say what it is, So in your kind of working with Baphomet and the gateway into magic, I assume then you were shown some things, or there was some kind of, for you to continue working with it, or like, have you long-term I suppose, battle plan on that, or are you just kind of taking it as it comes and just if he appears, he appears, you know?
I do view it as, I guess I would call it my patron or whatever. Like that's the main entity deity I work with. I've added a few others to the list. Hecate is one that features quite heavily. Recently, I've had some Eastern deities that seem to just kind of pop up, which is strange because I never had much interest in Eastern stuff. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the Western
Right,
stuff
yeah, yeah.
for
Did
now.
Ganesha appear? He usually appears to magicians.
Not really.
Right.
I haven't had much work with him yet. It was more Hanuman
Oh,
appeared
right,
at one
okay.
point.
Yeah.
That was interesting, but he seems to have kind of fucked off for now.
Right.
There was one time I got a scrying ball, and so I was reaching out to Hecate just trying to practice, scrying and try out my new scrying ball. And
Yeah.
so I started seeing an image in it, and it looked like, a woman with a crown. I was like, oh, Agate's coming through. This is
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
But then the image kind of developed further, sort of like the old 90s internet, as the image is loading up.
All right.
I realized, like, oh, no, this is, that's not a crown, that's the sun behind the head, and she's wearing a, like, white kimono, and it was Amaterasu,
Oh,
which
right,
I know
okay.
absolutely nothing about Shintoism, so that
Yeah,
was,
yeah, yeah.
that was surprising right there.
And did you go look into that, or did you just kind of see it as an interesting thing, or did you think that was a kind of a contact, or what was your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I started working with her for a little while. I think she was there more to help. I was kind of in a transitionary period at the time, and I think she was kind of there to help, you know, purify me to go on to the next step of I was in the middle of a move and all that kind of stuff. So I think she was just kind of there to help out with that. I haven't worked with her too much lately, but I still hold her in pretty high regards. Then Kali is the one that showed up most recently and who I've been doing the most work with lately, and that's been a wild
Is
ride.
your life falling apart?
I've definitely had
Is
some
it?
things fall apart and come back together, but not nearly as bad as some of the stories I've read from other people. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
pretty thankful for that. Hecate is the one that shook up my life the most. On my birthday last year, I did a Crossroads Ritual just to. I don't even know why I did it. I think I was just bored and, said, like, hey, change my life, take me to a better place in life, even though I wasn't in a bad place at the time.
Yeah.
And after I did that, like, I think 1 or 2 days after I did that Crossroads Ritual, I ended up losing a job, and a couple months later, I ended up moving out of the house, moving states, and yeah, I'm still kind of dealing with the aftershocks of that one, but it seems to be getting better, so I'm not complaining. Just
And but when you say lost a job and you moved and stuff like that, were you trusting in the process, or did it feel horrible? Did it feel bad? Like did you feel, oh, I fucked up here. I shouldn't have done this.
I was I was pretty calm about it. I kind of trusted it as I was walking away from the crossroads. I got to a point where I was crossing a bridge over a train track, and it's, they say don't look back after you leave the crossroads. So I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna keep my eyes forward, keep going. And as I'm going over the bridge, a train comes underneath, and the whole thing started shaking and rumbling. And I was
Nice.
like, oh, this is strange. So I get off the
Yeah.
bridge. I'm like, I entered into another world right here. Like this is first steps in a new life. And
Awesome.
yeah, so I just kind of went with it. I've learned through my practices not to try to control things so much. My life has gotten better since I've given up that control. So I kind of just go with the flow at this point.
Yeah, so tell me a bit about that, because I found that to be true as well. And it kind of comes from the thing I have. Sorry to talk about me, but let's just talk about me for a second. The thing I have about magic in that the more I want something, the less able I am to get it. Like, so say if I have 10 sigils, um, or whatever amount of sigils, and half of them are for things I don't care about, and the other half for things I really care about, I'll easily get the things I don't care about, where I'll struggle or something will happen. And that seems to be something definitely within me, but it seems to be fairly universal to other people, in that we have things like lust for result. We have these kind of things that we talk about to try and get out of these type of situations. But I have found that when you surrender or just allow things to happen, the things seem to go in a kind of get better in a way that you probably not expecting or you wouldn't have planned. It's almost like the thought is you don't really know what's good for you, and the kind of allow then to kind of surrender. But people get a bit concerned about the word surrender, particularly people who come from, say, a Christian background, because it sounds like you're giving up your power, and have come to magic to gain power rather than to give it away and stuff like that. So I'd be very interested just to hear your whole thoughts around surrender and what that feels like, or what that is to you. And did you have similar experiences when you force things? Are you less likely to get what you want, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. Anytime I try to, control things like, oh, this is what I want, this is what's going to happen, that it doesn't happen. So I have very similar experiences. I think it's kind of the same way as the Christians say, letting go and letting God. It's the same kind of concept of, Jesus take the wheel, except I just don't work with Jesus. So I do think it's more of we can't see the big picture of things, and these outside forces have a better viewpoint of our lives and what will work out best for us. So there are times where, it might be rough going for a while, but the end result will be much better than if you just got whatever you wanted whenever you wanted it. Yeah. So, I definitely do think that you can't try to control things so much. You should definitely just let go and see where the wind blows.
I suppose then the kind of counter that, or the argument, not the argument, but a complaint about that is, then what's the point of magic if you can't get what you want? And I see that. So I'll ask you the question: what is the point of magic if success is to be done in not doing it, in a sense, in surrendering and letting letting Baphomet take the wheel or whatever?
Recently I've been going down the Gnosticism rabbit hole, which so that's kind of the paradigm I'm looking at things through right now. So I would say the point is spiritual attainment, especially after this life, is to break out of the cycle of, death and rebirth. Again, that's my current paradigm. I don't know how long I will hold that belief, but it seems to be, as much as there's stuff in Gnosticism that I don't agree with, there is a lot that I think is very valid. I don't want to use the truth word because I don't know how much I believe in truth. But I do think there is definitely something there to Gnosticism. Same with Hinduism.
What do you feel is the something there in Gnosticism? What's floating your boat with it? What what's attracting it to you at the moment?
I do like the theory of emanations and the aeons, and as far as a creation story, I feel that's just as valid, if not more so, than a lot of the other ones we have.
In the sense that the demiurge isn't the real god, kind of thing, and that this is like being a cosmic mistake in some ways. Is that what you mean by the creation, or?
Yeah, that's part of it, but also just the layers of reality are different emanations from the pleroma, the source.
Right.
I do like the demiurge theory because I was raised, Protestant, pretty strict Christian, so I'm kind of like, he's the bad guy. Someone agrees with me there, but it's more of the. I find Sophia far more interesting than I do the demiurge.
Yeah.
And of course, Abraxas is another fascinating figure if you can't tell by the name I use.
Yeah, and I
So
mean, I think going back to Sophia thing, the thing, come to Gnosticism because of the attraction of the demiurge idea, but stay for Sophia because it's a much better idea. Like this
yes,
kind of,
yes.
the kind of, well, it's like where we get philosophy from and all this. It's a word that has come down through whatever. Even though, of course, the Christians tried to remove that entire femininity from the world stage. So you say there's things you don't like about Gnosticism that you're not willing to go the whole way. So what would they be?
Basically, my biggest complaint is all the varying threads of Gnosticism. No one can agree on anything, which is kind of the story behind all these occult practices. Is the more you try to learn about it, the more confusing it gets. Yeah, that and I'm not a big fan of the Samuel on Weor, however you say that name. He was way too Puritan for my taste. And that seems to be one of the main Gnostic groups these days, or his devotees, and
Right. Okay.
I'm not a big fan of that aspect of things. As far as the story itself, again, it's just my biggest complaint is how confusing it is to try to learn just what they were saying. But
Yeah.
I always have a hard time interpreting that old biblical style of writing,
Yeah,
even
'cause
as a
it's
kid.
it's simple in many ways, but it's not really, and it's kind of words and stuff that we use now is not how they used them then, and it's it can be all a bit confusing. I suppose the thing
Right.
with Gnosticism is that while it's very attractive, particularly if your life's not going the way you want it to be, to kind of have someone to blame and to feel that it's a giant mistake, but isn't your mistake, that kind of thing. But it's then there's the kind of sense of, well, what do you do about it? Well, you kind of have to shun the world. You have to pull yourself out of the world. You can't be attracted to any of the good stuff because that's continuing it. You shouldn't have kids. You shouldn't, do anything. And it's like the ultimate conclusion, in a sense, is go live in a cave and don't do anything. Don't interact with the world and all that. And while I see the logic, like I know why it gets there, I don't think that's a good thing to do with your life. Particularly if you have any sort of creativity or that. It's like it's Gnosticism and it's different sects of Gnosticism. Just as you say, there's loads of different ideas. It's kind of anti-creativity in a sense, and I find it a very hard paradigm to hang around with because of that. That you have to kind of refrain from more than just enjoyment, but from participating or creating or that kind of stuff. Do you find that from Gnosticism, or what's your feel on that?
Yeah, there's definitely some of the Gnostic groups that take that, you have to be an ascetic and
Yeah.
completely shun the world, which part of me agrees with it, but the other materialist part of me says, well, I don't want to. I enjoy some of these aspects.
Well,
So,
not even a materialist kind of thing. I'm not talking necessarily about stuff, but like say art or music or dancing or whatever it is. That kind of stuff. Any kind of performative, creative thing. Not just the cars or the big house or the celebrity or any of that. That's fair enough. Good point on all of that. But it's just in the kind of because I mix, or in my head, magic and art are very, very similar, if not the same thing. I
right.
can't fit a Gnostic art program into my head. It just doesn't seem to work. But I'm
Yeah,
sure
my
there is, and if
view,
someone had like, I kind of had the same thing with Buddhism, though. Although the Buddha did kind of reject asceticism and said, no, that's not the way. But there is a kind of that kind of refraining from adding to the world in Buddhism. That's also Gnosticism. Like it's like trying to whatever is the translation, the struggle or against dukkha is the thing that's causing you pain, and how you do it. Do you have like what's your creative outlet? What do you do? I assume we all have one. So, and how does that fit in with your current paradigm?
I enjoy writing. I haven't done much writing lately. I've had a bad case of writer's block ever since, I would say, mid 20s or so.
Okay.
Um, yeah, but I don't really do much creativity these days, or as art style, I guess. Don't do much art these days. But going back to the whole Gnostic Buddhist prison concept, I would say my view on that is the most punk rock thing you can do if you're trapped in a prison is to decorate your prison and start to enjoy, like, hey, you've got me stuck here, but I don't care. I'm enjoying this. I'm living my best life inside of this prison.
Sure.
So that's kind of my view on that aspect of the Gnostic problems with
Yeah, but
enjoying
then the
art.
kind of answer to that would be then is that you are giving credence to the prison, though. You're accepting the prison. You are allowing it, because you have said, well, I'm going to make the best of it. It's still kind of the acceptance of being in a prison or the allowance. I'm not saying I agree with it, but that is the kind of the counter to that. I do think it's like Grant Morrison's thing of being positive is the most punk rock thing you can do because you're not meant to be positive anymore. You're meant to be negative, So it's
Right.
it's having your best life within the demiurge's realm, I suppose.
Yeah, I would say, you might accept you're in a prison for the time being, but you also know that you can get out one day. So while you're here, might as well just, not hate it, not be miserable every single second.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the punk rock of positivism. So what do you think then? To get to the heavy questions, I suppose. Why are we here? Well, like I know you said that Gnosticism is your kind of current paradigm, but you have an overview? Like, what is the thing we are doing here? Like, why am I here? Why are you here? Why does art exist? Is it an accident? Is there a purpose?
My best theory on that at this point, and again, I stress that this is a theory. I'm not
Sure.
claiming to have any sort of truth here. I would say it's, we are an exploration of the, for lack of a better term, the pleroma source. It's whatever there is, which I tend to just use the term existence because there is nothing outside of existence. So I
Right.
think that's
Yeah.
a pretty good term for it. It's just a further definition of, okay, this is what existence is like as Tommy Kelly. This is what existence is like as myself. And, there's infinite sided die basically of, well, this is how life turns out if you do this. This is how life turns out if this happens.
Okay.
So
But
that's my
to
best
what
guess.
end, I suppose? But like to is it like kind of like you have the idea that it's God trying to in some way evolve or to know about itself. Going back to the Kabbalah thing where saying that God couldn't know himself unless there was. I've no idea. My smoke alarm just started going off. Don't talk about the demiurge.
That was me. I wanted to appear there, so astral projection and all that.
Yeah. But yeah, so I suppose I was saying, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so in Kabbalah, you have the idea that there was the beginning, the fairy thing. Is it Ein Sof? It's called, and then it's only with contrast that it's able to understand itself. So it's that whole idea of that, you don't know about light until you have dark. You don't know about sadness until you have happiness and that kind of thing. So is that kind of your idea that?
That's the best explanation for it is just further definition of what exactly life is. You gotta see each different potentiality just so you can further define existence, I guess. Yeah, again, I would agree that it is a way for the source, pleroma, whatever, to learn about itself, to experience every potential thing. I think it was Grant Morrison's Kathmandu experience of, however many billion years ago a single cell divided, and if you reverse time we all go back to that one cell, and that cell is the seed of another god or something.
Yes,
I
yeah.
like that. That's a very
Yeah.
psychedelic, trippy, nice thought. As far as how objectively true that is, I don't know, because again, I don't really believe in objective truth.
Sure.
So
Yeah. And even if you did, how practical would it be? Anyway, it doesn't pay.
yeah,
It doesn't pay the rent.
right,
So
right.
then, what is magic in that? Like, what right? No, here's a better question. Why does magic work?
Oh man,
Just the easy questions. We'll just do the easy ones.
yeah. It's a get to know you conversation.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't think I have an answer for that one. I think it's just another aspect of this reality, this existence, whatever you want to call it. It is something, because if we are all part of the, pleroma, source, whatever, then we have the same potential that has, I guess, and
Right.
that's,
Yeah.
I guess that's my best answer for that. There is, it is the creative force.
So would you kind of work on a kind of consciousness model, I suppose, of reality and magic and stuff like that? I know you're saying you're getting a bit into energy, but would it mostly be a consciousness type thing?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And with the in the what's your thoughts then on things like simulation theory or the Matrix and stuff like that? Like, is this do you believe there is an out there, or is it all like, is it idealism, or is it how does that look to you?
I've struggled with the whole simulation theory quite a bit. I kind of swing back and forth between, yeah, it's definitely that, but, and not quite so much. I think if it is a whole simulation thing, it's not a simulation in the way that we commonly think of a simulation as. It's not like a video game type
Yeah, yeah,
matrixy experience. There is, concrete material and stuff like that. As far as is there an outside, I would say I would go back to Gnosticism with that and think, there's the different aeons, different realms, and things like that. As far as what that looks like, what those are, I have no idea. That is,
yeah.
I think that's just kind of uncomprehendable to us at this time. Same thing with the multiple universe theory. Like, again, I swing back and forth between, yeah, that makes total sense, and well,
Yeah.
how does that fit in with this? And I have a lot of conflicting viewpoints on things. I don't quite know how to reconcile all of them, and
Yeah.
that's been a interesting journey. Is especially going through the whole conspiracy world. Is, oh yes, everything's a conspiracy, but no one knows because they're all full of shit. And
Yeah, yeah. The conspiracy stuff I find fascinating, but I always kind of get to the point where it just goes that step too far or something, and I kind of go, oh well, no, I can't go there. But I think an awful lot of people. Well, that's not true. Some people seem to be attracted to things like simulation theory, conspiracy, and stuff like that. Is because they hope that their life isn't actually the way it is, and that
right,
that they're going to be unplugged from the matrix, and then their real life will begin and stuff like that. So be very wary of conspiracy, as fun as they all are, because we're just trying, because we're bored with life, or it's unexciting, or there's no magic left in the world for us, so that we have to go, well, it's flat earth, or it's hollow earth, or it's something. But then on the counter of that is, of course, you don't want to you don't want to discount any of the stuff too, because there's definitely stuff going on that we're not being told about, and
right.
it seems perfectly clear that the full story or the cards are not fully being shown, to the rest of the world. But it's where kind of does your brain go with the conspiracy stuff? Is it have you gone fully into it? Are you fully immersed? Have you just stuck your foot in, or how do you see it like a bit like entertainment as I do in some way, or?
I tend to I take a scuba diving or not snorkeling approach to conspiracies where I'm floating above it. I look down into and see all of it because I just find it all fascinating, but I try not to immerse myself too fully into it. One thing that really helps me is having an occult background. Is whenever they bring up Crowley, I'm like, oh right, these people don't know what they're talking about when they say Crowley was a Satanist who sacrificed babies,
Sure.
and
Yeah, yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
okay, that kind of helps ground me a little bit and bring me back to you know I guess the real world or whatever you want to call it. Of okay, maybe there's not a worldwide organization of Satanists who are trying to sacrifice the human race so that they can appease their child sex god. And
Reptilian
yeah,
overlords.
yeah. There are a lot of them that I do think are pretty valid. More of the, I guess, boring ones like the JFK and all that kind of stuff. But they're not as fun. Not as fun as the crazy ones. Like Alex Jones is one of my favorite people. He's so entertaining. I'm not saying I agree with him on everything. I just think he's a very entertaining person. He's hilarious. Conspiracies are more of just a fun thing for me. I enjoy listening to the podcast, especially of people who are really dumb going into them. And it's entertainment as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I enjoyed them too. But one way to kind of counter, as you say, once you have a bit of knowledge around it. But another thing is to hang out on the conspiracy on Reddit, and you see how serious they take every single thing, and then forget about it next week. And it's just that didn't happen. And you go, but you said last week that Hillary Clinton was a reptile, and now you're saying she's not. With equal figure, and you're completely on board with it. But she definitely is a reptile. Like that's unquestionable anyway. So.
My favorite is they'll go, the Catholic Church is all evil, is run by Satanists, but then they turn it around when it comes to an occult topic and say, oh, well, this is God versus the devil. I'm like, well, you gotta pick a side there. You can't, have it both ways. If you either think Christianity is an enslavement tool or it is the truth, because you can't say it's an enslavement tool and then turn around and say that there's a battle between, God and the devil. That's kind of the whole purpose of Christianity.
A lot of that. All right. Have you any big magical plans? Have you anything that you're going to hang out in Gnosticism for a while, or what are you going to do? What are you going to do, man?
I've already kind of gotten away from practicing Gnosticism. I still find it fascinating, and I study it quite a bit. But I don't really practice it as much these days. As far as upcoming workings I'm doing, I am working on a pretty big ritual, probably the biggest one I've ever done, but it's not something I'm ready to talk about until after I do it.
Good boy.
It's in my experience, I found the more I talk about something, the less I actually do. So I've tried to get better about walking the walk rather than just sitting there and running off at the mouth about, oh, well, this, and this.
If you talk about it, is it that you won't do it, or it's? I'll tell you what I'm trying to explain is that if I talk about, say, a story I'm going to write or a picture I'm going to draw, it's almost as if the part of me believes that that's actually been done now. So if I describe the new comic that I'm working on to you, it's kind of as if it has manifested in some way. So all of the energy kind of has dissipated. You have to kind of build that up. That's what I find about talking about things. But they say that even from a completely mundane point of view, that if you tell other people your goals and like your New Year's kind of things that you're going to do, any of these type of things, that you're less likely to do them. Whereas you would think that if you'd have kind of people on your back and stuff like that you would do them. But it seems the more silent you are, the more likely you are to hold and follow through in these things. Which of course is one of the oldest magical ideas that there is. To just shut up for a while, stop talking, stop telling everyone.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like if you talk about something, it kind of satisfies the urge a little bit to put it out there. And it's kind of when other people get involved in things, it's weird. I've moved around quite a bit the past several years, and one of the things I found is when you move somewhere where no one knows you and, there's no sort of personality baggage to hold you back, you can be whatever you want to be. And I find much more success whenever I get to a new city and no one in the city knows me. I'm just there by myself. Whereas when I go back, to my hometown to visit or whatever, things start to kind of, I start falling into old habits, and it's almost like people have their image of you, and somehow that starts to affect you. Even if you don't go and see any of those people, just like being in that area where there's people who know you or knew a version of you, you start to become that person just by being there. So...
Did you ever look into any of the reality transurfing stuff?
I haven't. I've heard you and Spud talking about it a lot.
Because that whole thing you're describing there is described in it as a pendulum.
Really?
That's the whole idea of it, that you get sucked into the energy of a situation. and your family, of course, can have one. Your hometown can have one. Your school friends you grew up with, and you kind of revert back to, in a sense, who you were in some way in that original relationship. It's very interesting thought because it's most people I think would agree with that kind of sentiments that you've just said, that there is a kind of a, if you say you meet people who you worked with 10 years ago, there's this kind of pull to be that person, or that kind of situation. I know when I moved to a new town, and it wasn't that far away from the town I was in, I had exactly the same experience of people not knowing me, and it was well, without even having to fully reinvent yourself or do anything. It's because that it sounds like you were deliberately doing something. It wasn't. Had the allowance to be myself, not the person I had been. So it wasn't that I went, oh, no one knows me, I can do what I want. It's no one knows me, so I can be who I am.
Yes.
That you're not bound to the rules or the pendulums, if you want to talk in those terms, of old relationships or old places. But of course, we can't move all the time. We can't just keep going.
Hey, speak for yourself. I've moved quite a bit the past few years, so.
Right.
But I do think there's something about you meet those people who never left their hometown. They live 5 miles from where they were born at, and there's just something there that you're like, this isn't quite right. You've got to get out, get away, do something, and it's almost like a psychic trap, for lack of a better term.
Or as if, like, kind of in the way Jung would talk about an archetype possessing someone. It's almost as if the place or that, who they were when they were 20 has possessed that person for the rest of their life or something. Right. Are they even there anymore? Is there any new thought or new? Is there any volition of themselves in it? It's very odd. I do know. I have experienced that, meeting people who. I've also met people who are very wise who didn't leave the hometown either. So it's not that it's.
It's not universal.
Yeah, definitely not. But it is something I've noticed, and it's very strange when you meet someone who, say, you went to school with or something, and you go, "Oh, you haven't changed at all." Like that, you are exactly the person. Even wearing the same clothes or whatever it is. But I suppose that's a bit judgy too. I suppose who knows what's going on in people's lives. But it seems right. It seems to be a thing.
I don't know, I just think it's so much better to get out there and be somewhere new so that you can be someone new. It's, I went from Florida to Alaska to Texas and all these other places in between. And, like, each place was a different stage of my personal development. And I think that's pretty important, because then I get back, to my hometown to go and visit, and I see people doing the same exact thing for the, past 10 years or so, going to the same bars every night. I'm like, you guys haven't, like, grown at all.
Yeah. I suppose there's the danger of then is running away from yourself too, isn't there? Like, if you're constantly moving and stuff, that you're never, not saying you are, but I mean a kind of more general thing that, at some point you have to face yourself. You have, at some point you're going to have to do the shadow work. At some point you're going to have a look at that shitty that's inside you and all that. But I don't think that's what you're talking about, though. I don't think that's the same thing.
No, you've got to pair it with personal development. It has to be a conscious, effort to change and grow and develop. So it's kind of a same thing I hear people talking about. It's kind of big in some occult circles is the, semen retention and, holding off the orgasm, where then you have the Reddit no-fap movement. Like, well, you guys aren't pairing that with the, personal or, like, psychic, spiritual development side of it. You're just kind of denying yourself fun just for the sake of it.
Because you feel guilty.
Right.
And shameful.
If you want to get the true benefits, you've got to pair that with, spiritual development.
Well, that's the problem with Google mindfulness, isn't it? Like this kind of corporate industrial mindfulness that we have now, that it's like, it's all great, and it probably is a lot of stress reduction and stuff like that. But without it being paired with the Four Noble Truths or, whatever each thing, it's not the full package, and it's not designed to be a separate kind of, just, I'll shut up for 20 minutes a day and then my work life will be better. Well, no, you shut up for 20 minutes a day and then, you go into the world from a different perspective and you approach it that way.
I was just saying it's a very shallow kind of a materialist perspective of, all I have to do is this? Okay, great.
it is the most materialist kind of outlook on meditation, this kind of
Yes.
corporate meditation. Is there anything you wanted to talk about that we didn't talk about, or anything that you wanted to say to the greater world now while you have the chance, or any of those things?
No, I really can't think of anything. I'm not exactly the most social person, so this is you've gotten me out of my little cave here. So this has definitely been a fun conversation, and I look forward to seeing the reactions to this.
Yeah, it's been great, and I do appreciate the fact that you aren't, as you said, like the most sociable person, and I know how hard these things can be for people to do when haven't done them before, even the setting up of the Skype and all of these different things. So I do really appreciate it, and I do hope people kind of appreciate it when they're listening back to these things, that it's like the whole kind of idea of this podcast is just to have conversations with, quote unquote, normal magicians, normal wizards who are just living the life from a magic perspective. And thank you for sharing your story with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed this whole Magical People series so far.
So we'll do some more, and then maybe have you back on at some stage in the future if you're game.
Yeah, sounds good.